Welcome back to Scholar IAS current affair classes. Hope you're all doing good. So let's get into the classes. So the first topic is on Kachativ Island. So this is important for your GS2 International Relations paper. So there has been a conflict around this island, the Kachativ Island, because of which the Indian fishermen were killed by Sri Lankan Navy. So this is what the main conflict is. Let's try to understand this conflict in a deeper manner. Okay. So in the past, Indian fishermen from the nearby coast of Tamil Nadu, they used the grounds around, the fishing grounds around Talaimannar and Kachativ Islands of Sri Lanka. But the reason why they actually used this region of Sri Lanka for fishing is, this region is rich in maritime resources, as well as this area was not guarded by Sri Lankan Navy when LTT was in Sri Lanka. So this area came under the control of LTTT. Sri Lankan Navy couldn't control this area. So Indian fishermen were free to fish on these grounds. But even after LTT, the continued usage of this region by Indian fishermen led to depletion of resources for Sri Lankan fishermen. And also, Indian fishermen had advanced trawlers, that is mechanized trawlers for fishing, which destroyed the marine environment as well. And along with that, they were in direct competition with Sri Lankan fishermen who were poor and they were using manual boats. So they did not have mechanized boats or trawlers to exploit the resources as quick as Indian fishermen. So this raises a conflict, major conflict. In addition to this, there is also another conflict, another reason for this conflict, that is the conflict of ownership itself, the ownership of Kachativ Island. Because Tamil fishermen had traditional rights, fishing rights for centuries in this Kachativ Island. But the ownership around this Kachativ Island has been an unresolved issue, and that is why this conflict keeps arising now and then. So why does this island remain a disputed region? In 1974, the Indian government, what they did was they signed a maritime boundary with Sri Lanka. So according to this agreement, the international boundary was demarcated in the Park Bay, Bay of Bengal and Gulf of Mannar region. This was done. But in this process, the Indian government did not engage the Tamil Nadu government. And also in the process of agreement, Kachativ Island was ceded to Sri Lanka without consultation with Tamil Nadu government, where actually Indian fishermen had traditional and ethnic and economic linkages to that particular region. Not only about fishing, but it was beyond that in traditional sense as well as ethnic as well as cultural sense. So when this kind of an ethnic linkage is there to this region, the Indian government went ahead without consulting the Tamil Nadu government and entered an agreement. Further, India also ceded this territory without amending the Indian constitution. So there is also a constitutional issue associated with it, because the Indian constitution demands, the part 1 of the Indian constitution demands any such ceding of territory has to happen only through an amendment to the constitution. So this process is still under judicial scrutiny. So these are the main reasons why the island remain a disputed region. Though the agreement that India and Sri Lankan government entered into allowed for Indian fishermen to use the island, that is the Kachativ Island, for resting and even to dry their nets to attend Saint Anthony's festival. So I told you that there is a traditional linkage to this region for Indian fishermen and Indian side of people. So this Saint Anthony's festival is one sort of traditional linkage. And though these rights were given for Indian fishermen, this agreement allowed for these things, it did not explicitly ensure any traditional fishing rights. So this is where the conflict arises. When they were allowed to use some sort of, the Indian fishermen allowed to exercise few rights that were associated with fishing, like drying the nets, resting, but they were not actually allowed to fish, which was a traditional right that they were exercising for centuries. And along with this, the depletion of maritime resource in the Indian region altogether led to this conflict, and this island remains a disputed part of the whole agreement itself. This being the issue, what can be done to come out of this conflict? Where lies the solution? So the Indian government has to engage with Sri Lankan government in ensuring that Indian fishermen get their fishing rights to fish in their in the Kachadiv Island region. But at the same time, Indian fishermen should also not be allowed to use trawlers, because it would not be a fair competition when compared to poor fishermen from Sri Lanka. And in addition to this, India also should try to get sovereignty over Kachadiv Island, for simple reason that there is no constitution, it is not valid and it is still under judicial scrutiny. The agreement has to be reviewed and there has to be bilateral engagement, and India should try to assert its sovereignty over this island. So students, this is about Kachadiv Island article. You can expect an article, you can't expect a direct mains question on this Kachadiv Island, but it can be a question on, it can be a point, you can use this point in any neighborhood relations policies of India. So if a question is asked about the issues that India has with its neighbors, then this is a particular issue that you can point it out with Sri Lanka. So this is how you should be able to connect any article or any mains point with the mains questions. Okay, so let's move on to the next article. The second article is on insolvency and bankruptcy code. Okay, so this is again related to your GS3 economy paper. Okay, what has happened is Supreme Court recently said that the successful bidders for a corporate debtor under IBC, that is insolvency and bankruptcy code, would be immune from any investigation. So basically what does this say? Any new bidder for a corporate debtor would be granted protection from the misgivings of previous officials. So basically it says that it's very logical that any new bidder who comes into picture, who tries to take ownership of the debt and try to resolve it, should not be charged or investigated for the misgivings of the previous officials who were holding this office. So that's what this actually the Supreme Court observes. And when we say investigation, the investigation agencies include enforcement directorates and other statutory bodies such as SEBI as well, because they are involved in this process of IBC. And it also, the Supreme Court also validated section 32A of IBC code, which says that it is necessary, this section basically that says that new bidders should be given immunity has been validated because it is necessary to attract better investors for completion of the corporate insolvency resolution process. Because if a new bidder is afraid or is being threatened with legal issues, then who would be ready to take up any sort of risk to totally turn around this corporate issues. So to avoid that particular incident, this Supreme Court has validated section 32A of IBC code. Not only this immunity, this immunity provision is going to help to turn around the assets of corporate debtor, but also it forms an important part of the process in cleaning up the bad loans of banks, because corporate debts and bad banks, NPAs in banks are linked together. So if the assets are, if the resolution process is fast tracked and if it is resolved in a more efficient manner, then the bad loans, the NPAs that are accumulated in banks will also be sorted out. But this immunity that has been extended is only applicable in case the resolution plan has been approved and also the management is changed altogether, because the same management should not be allowed to continue, because it doesn't actually help the process of resolving the issue of bankruptcy. So this is what the provision is about. Now let's try to understand the significance of it. First thing is, though this provision of immunity is being given, there is lack of clarity around the immunity. How much of these new bidders would be immune to what extent, on what basis? These are not clearly provided. So still there could be some sort of dilemma for the new bidders to enter into this whole process itself. And also the implementation of resolution plan is questionable, because effective implementation of resolution plan only can yield results. Because of these two things, it's doubtful whether the full potential of IBC could be realized or not. But despite these dilemmas, the new order could incentivize the successful bidders, though there is some sort of clarity as I mentioned, but the successful bidders, to some extent, that the clarity, that the support that the government gives would actually incentivize and encourage the successful bidders, as they are immune from investigation, as I mentioned before, and their assets also will be secured. This way, this IBC Supreme Court's order on this IBC session is very important. So all this being said, let's try to understand some background around this IBC. Okay, so this IBC, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, was passed in 2016. But first, let's try to understand what does insolvency means. Insolvency is the inability of the individuals or corporates to repay their debts. If you have borrowed money and if you are unable to repay it, then as an individual or as a corporate, you are categorized as an insolvent. And bankruptcy is a legal declaration of insolvency, nothing else. Okay, so these two are interlinked. And this IBC code 2016 actually consolidates all the laws related to insolvency in India and simplifies the process of insolvency resolution. Before IBC 2016, there were multiple legislations that were dealing with this particular issue, but now it is streamlined through this IBC. And the IBC 16 is very comprehensive and covers all individuals, companies, limited liability partnerships, and even partnership firms. Students, this is very important for your prelims. They could be asking which of this are covered, which of these organizations or which of the forms of resolutions individuals or companies are covered under IBC 2016. Okay, so make a note of this point. So under this IBC, NCLT, that is National Company Law Tribunal, is the adjudicating authority for companies and LLPs, that is limited liability partnerships. And that is another body authority that is called Debt Recovery Tribunal. This is the adjudicating authority for individuals and partnership firms. And also this IBC code allows insolvency process, resolution process, to be initiated by any of the stakeholders of the firm. So when we say any of the stakeholders, it means it includes firm, the debtors, the creditors, even the employees. So this is also important for your prelims. Make a note of it. So this article, you could have seen some points are important. This NCLT, DRT, the points associated with this, as well as the previous the point that we saw in the previous slide, along with the whole article itself, is important for your mains as well as prelims. So make a note of it. So this is all about IBC article. So students, we have come to the end of this session. Hope you like the class. For more such videos, subscribe to our channel. Also visit our platform scholar.com for more content related to current affairs as well as static content. Okay, so till next class, happy learning. Bye bye.